Cavan Scott has written a number of Star Wars Adventures comics, as well as the Star Wars Adventures in Wild Space series for young readers. The Rising Storm marks his first Star Wars novel for adult audiences, and as the second adult hardcover release in the High Republic series, it picks up 1 year after the events of Light of the Jedi. The Rising Storm made it to number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of July 18th, 2021. So briefly, after the tragedy of the Great Disaster, Chancellor Lina So plans a Republic Fair, an event to showcase the possibility of the expanding Republic, and multiple Jedi attend as ambassadors of peace. But as the eyes of the galaxy turn towards the fair, so too does the fury of the Nile. Instead of breaking my review up into the good and the meh, I'm just gonna go back and forth between the two because a lot of what I found good was also directly linked to things that I found more meh. First, the pace. The first 200 pages of the book felt a little slow to me. It was easy to put them down because it was mostly just build up to the fair. And at one point, I actually put the book down for a few days because something really upsetting happened to one of my favorite characters, Bel Zettifar. But from about page 200 until the end, the story moves very quickly. Almost too quickly, I wonder, because it's just action after action after action. The chapters are short. Most of them end on cliffhangers, so you're unsure of the fate of different characters. And while that was quicker and easier to read than the preceding half, it was almost overwhelming at times because so much was happening and there were very few lulls in the action. I'm still finding that especially the adult novels of the High Republic series bombard you with especially Jedi characters to the point that I started to keep a spreadsheet of just everyone. I fortunately found a very helpful list that someone had made on Reddit, which formed the base of my spreadsheet, but I'm finding that since I haven't read any of the comics, either the comics for adult audiences or for younger audiences, I feel like I'm missing out on some of the story here. Avar Kriss is absent for the whole book. She's off dealing with the Drengir, and I assume that that's something covered in the comics. But since I don't plan on reading the comics until there's a trade paperback release, I'm left wondering what I'm missing. I expected that the adult hardcover books in particular would be the main plot events and that the other books would be more side stories, but that's definitely not the case here. It feels like to get a complete picture of the High Republic and everything that's happening, you really have to seek out each and every piece of media that's released, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. But on the plus side, I feel like I did connect with some of the characters. Once again, I really love Bel Zettifar. I love the journey that he's going through. So many bad things happen to him, and it's breaking my heart. And then with newer characters that we're introduced here to, I find Elzar Mann really interesting. I find him an example of someone who maybe is not best served by the Jedi Order and would have been better and happier in a different Force tradition. Some of the Jedi we meet are obviously very happy with the structure and order that the Jedi Order provides, but Elzar is not one of them. He makes some bad decisions here, and I'll be interested to see how his character grows and progresses in future books. And then I also really like Ty York. She's very different from the Jedi around her. She once was part of the Jedi Order but left it. And while she's tried to become a lone wolf, she finds herself being drawn into what the Jedi are dealing with. I'm interested in her backstory, but again, I feel like it's going to be relegated to the comics, and that's something really important that I wanted to know now, and I'm sad that I'll have to wait for. Scott also introduces and adds a whole slew of aliens, which on the one hand is really exciting. The Galaxy Fair is bringing people from all over. The Nile is composed of all different kinds of people, but there's not really descriptions of them. So, for instance, one of the Nile is a lamproid. And if you remember from the non special edition of A New Hope, there is a lamproid at the Mos Eisley Cantina. So I could picture that alien and I knew what he looked like. But for other ones, we're just given the name. We're not given any description of what they look like. And it reaches a point where you get tired of Googling them, and so you just give up and you're left with an incomplete picture. And finally, I know that the High Republic is coming in 3 phases, and within the phases there are sections as well, and we're currently in part 2 of phase 1. But I'd really wish that we could get some sense of the overarching plot, I guess, here. Marchion Roan's objectives are still a mystery to us. He acquires this horrifying great beast, but we don't know what he's aiming for or why. That's left for another book. And the Drengir, who were introduced in Claudia Gray's young adult novel, we hear that the Nile were trying to plant Drengir spores during the Great Fair attack, which is something that I believe is covered in the middle grade novel Race to Crash Point Tower. And Avar Kriss and the other Jedi are off dealing with them, but it's completely outside of the story. So the High Republic is obviously building towards things, but they're kept more of a mystery right now than I would like. So in short, The Rising Storm starts out slow and then picks up a lot. Your mileage will vary whether you feel like that was too much or a great improvement over what came before. We have loads of characters, some you may connect with, some you may not, and loads of aliens who you may or may not recognize. I'm excited to jump into the young adult and middle grade High Republic novels for this part 2 of phase 1 though, to try to fill in some of the gaps of what I felt like I was missing in The Rising Storm. And then a side note, Star Wars The High Republic Showdown at the Fair is a kid-friendly overview of the Great Fair plotline, but for some reason it's not coming out until October 5th, 2021. But on the plus side, it seems like it focuses on Burryaga the Wookiee Padawan, and once again features 2 pages of stickers.